You're watching WSTV Digital Media.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the July 13, 2017 meeting of the City County Planning Board. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Today's meeting is being broadcast live by Winston-Salem TV Digital Media. It will be rebroadcast at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, again at 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon. Our first order of business today is the consent agenda. These are items for which the petitioner is requesting withdrawal or continuance, or items for which the staff has recommended approval and no one has signed up to speak in opposition. For public hearings today, each side will have a total of 12 minutes. There is no rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed and the board goes into work session, no one will be permitted to speak unless a planning board member asks a question. For general use district zoning request, the board must consider the full range of uses allowed in the zoning district. Therefore, the petitioner may not refer to a specific use for the property. For special use district zoning, however, the petitioner must identify the intended use or uses and give specific details on how the property will be developed. Items under Section B of our agenda require final action by either the City Council or County Commissioners. As such, votes taken today or recommendations go to those boards for their consideration. If you are addressing the board today, before you begin your remarks, please give us your name, address, and zip code for the record. First item of business is approval of the minutes of the June 8, 22, and 26 meetings. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Younger. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Now I'll call on Mr. King for our consent agenda.
All right, thank you. First item is item B2. It's zoning docket W3334, and this is a request to rezone about 3/4 of an acre from LBS to NB. It's located on the north side of Old Hollow Road. This case that it failed to satisfy the neighborhood outreach requirements that were recently adopted by City Council. So this will automatically be continued to your August meeting. The petitioner is aware of what they need to do to have this square, so we should be good to go for August. Next item is B3, zoning docket W3336. This is a request to rezone about a half acre from RS9 to PBL, located on the northwest corner of Sprague Street and Dacian Street. This is another case where the neighborhood meeting requirements were not met by the deadline. This is a case where the petitioner was working with a council member to set up a neighborhood meeting that has been set up for July 24th. So this will be good to go for your August meeting, but it will be automatically continued to that point. Next case is the same petitioner in kind of the same general area. This is a little bit further west over on Old Lexington. Request to rezone from GI to LI. We're going to cover both of these cases at the same neighborhood meeting on July 24th. So again, this will come back to you in August, automatically continue to that point. Next case is B5, zoning docket W3338. This is a request to rezone 3.3 acres from RMUS to PBS, and the site is located on the east side of South Main Street, north of Cassell Street. This is a case where the applicant has had at least 2 meetings with the neighborhood. I know there are still some issues that have to be worked out. It's my understanding, though, this case wasn't ready to go for a vote today. They're still working through some of those issues. So it's my understanding they're going to continue working on that, and it will come back to you in August, but it's automatically continued at this point. The next case is B6, zoning docket F1567. This is a request to rezone a little over an acre from RS9 to IPS, institutional public special use. And this is for St. James United Methodist Church up in Rural Hall, kind of on the north side of Bethania Rural Hall Road and Bethania Germantown Road. You can see the existing structure there. The site's currently zoned RS9. This request to IPS is to allow to add a daycare center there, a child daycare center that's not operated by the church. That's the key consideration. If it was operated by the church, we could consider it accessory, but by being operated independently, it requires the IP zoning. So this is the site plan that was submitted with this request. Not a whole lot of change to the site. Building staying where it is, parking and access points generally staying the same. Probably the two biggest changes are the addition of the fenced-in play area to the north of the building located in this area, and then the installation of a buffer yard along the eastern property line. I will call attention to this one section kind of close to the existing drive there. It's pretty narrow there. They will probably have to go to the County Board of Adjustment for a buffer yard variance for that section, and they're aware of that. Area plan recommends institutional for this site, and staff does recommend approval of this. And we did contact Rural Hall, and they're also supportive of this.
Good, thank you. No one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? So no one, I declare you're opposed to it, sir? Yes, sir. Okay, then we'll pull this off consent and come back to it later. Okay. All right.
Next item is C1. This is subdivision 2017-059, and this is for the Sage Creek subdivision. It's about 28 acres over in the western part of the county, east of Olivet Church Road, kind of north of Spicewood Drive. And you can see the subject property outline or shown in yellow there. This is the site plan that was submitted with this request for 56 lots. There's an existing public street located in this area. The developer would be installing a new public street that would connect from that point and also tie into an existing public street over to the northeast in this area. This is not a PRD, it's a conventional subdivision, so we're not looking at things like open space and buffer yards, rather just making sure all the lots are 9,000 square feet in size and 65 feet in width, and they are. They have provided a stub to this, this future phase over here. So the idea would be that there would be a creek crossing at some point in the future, and that road network would continue into this southern piece to serve that area. Staff has reviewed this, and we would recommend approval of this subdivision request.
Move approval.
Second. Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
All right.
You should get that thing off the screen there.
Please.
I was quick. All right. First public hearing item is zoning docket W 3333, and this is a request of Walltown Cemetery, Inc. for about 0.8 of an acre located on the west side of Light Street between Walltown and Sprague. And the request is to rezone from RS9 to IPL. That's institutional and public limited use zoning. And the only use that's being requested is cemetery. This is Legacy's growth management plan. You can see the subject property there located in the pink growth management area 2, urban neighborhoods area. And the location map with the subject property shown in yellow. So the existing Walltown Cemetery is located just to the west. It's the IP zoning that you see here. And essentially this would be an extension of the cemetery property over to Light Street. You can see the zoning pattern in the area consists of RS9 zoning surrounding it and a little mixture of non-residential zoning up at Walltown and Light, that intersection. And this is an aerial image, which again you can see the existing cemetery located there. The subject property is currently undeveloped. These are some images taken on site. This is looking into the site from Light Street. You can see some of the existing vegetation has been removed in this area. This is looking across Light Street from the subject property. And then looking north on Light Street from the subject property, looking towards Walltown Street and the non-residential zoning in that area. The site is adjacent to an existing cemetery which is zoned IP already and in the same ownership. IPL zoning for a cemetery at this location, staff feels, is compatible with the surrounding area. Again, this is only for one use under consideration, that's cemetery, and the request is consistent with the purpose statement of the IP district. Staff does recommend approval of this request, but we would add one condition. I talked to the applicant about this morning. IP zoning against RS zoning, there's a buffer yard that's required there. Simply changing the zoning does not trigger that buffer yard being installed. It's when improvements go in on the property, and we usually catch that when somebody comes in and gets a building or makes improvements. We catch it through either building permits or occupancy permits. Well, the cemetery, that's a little different because we're not putting buildings or things of that nature on there. However, if you do want to record and put burial plots on there for sale, you do have to come in to our department and record a subdivision plat that puts those plots on record. So we would add the condition that prior to the signing of any plats, the developer shall install that type 2 buffer yard adjacent to residentially zoned land is already required by the UDO. And where we're talking about on that is, if you can follow the mouse, it's that northern line. There's a little sliver of RS9 there where it will be required, and then along that southern property line. So that's what we're talking about. Again, that's already required by the UDO. I spoke with the applicant. They're agreeable to the condition. So with that, we would recommend approval.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions of staff at this time? Okay. This is a public hearing. Signed up as proponent, Steve Morgan.
Thank you. My name's Steve Morgan, 2833 Birchwood Drive, Winston-Salem, 27103. I'm one of 4 volunteer trustees for this cemetery. It is a 501c13 corporation. This journey began in December when we purchased these 3 vacant lots that had been for sale for probably a couple of years. At that point in time, we didn't buy them with rezoning in mind. The only reason we bought them was primarily for the protection of the cemetery. These 3 lots had become a dumping ground for litter, beer cans, liquor bottles, food wrappers, you name it. It had just become a dumping ground. And a lot of that was spilling over into the cemetery itself, which is, of course, adjacent to the 3 lots. So our primary purpose in buying the lots was to just protect cemetery interest. What brought about rezoning for consideration was when we got a tax bill from the city county to pay taxes on the 3 lots we purchased. Since we're a 501c13 corporation, we don't pay property taxes. So I contacted the tax office, and I have spoken with Ann Roosh and Betty Vitter from the tax office, and I was given the scenario that the way you get it off the tax rolls is you get it rezoned. So that's what brought about the rezoning request. So primarily the rezoning is all about money. It cost $1,000 to file for rezoning, but in 3.5 years we will save that much money in property taxes, and then going forward we would be coming out ahead. So that's the primary driver of all of this. As the pictures showed, we are clearing those lots and have been clearing the lots probably for the last several months. We're also clearing trees and debris from the existing cemetery. Again, this is all about protecting grave sites. Trees had become more dead than alive. We had a lot of trees falling on grave sites, destroying headstones, that sort of thing. We've also, over the years, encountered a lot of vandalism in that cemetery. If you took a walk through the cemetery, you would find numerous instances of headstones being pushed over, broken, destroyed. So there is vandalism that has occurred, and we have filed police reports in the past, and police have responded to those reports. To my knowledge, police do ride through there on occasion, just looking for prospective trouble. Part of the removing of all the trees, including these 3 lots we purchased, is that we believed that if we take away as much of the opportunity for people to come in and not be detected, then we may be helping ourselves a great deal by doing that. So that's what we've done. I have spoken to numerous neighbors in the area. I think I've now spoken to all the 4 property owners that have backyards going up to the cemetery. Their addresses would be Sprague Street, and each of their backyards go right up to these 3 lots. They don't have a problem with the rezoning, and in fact, we as a cemetery have agreed to take down numerous trees on their property just to help them at cemetery expense. It's helping them, it's helping us. So, bottom line, we're doing a lot of cleaning up of the cemetery itself and of these 3 lots. We never intend to bury people on these 3 lots. That's not the purpose in owning them. The purpose in owning them is for protection of the existing grave sites. So we don't plan to develop these 3 lots, not build anything on them, but hopefully be able to beautify the 3 lots as money allows us to do. So I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Yeah, I did have a question. Will there be any access to the cemetery through this property, like a road?
We have no intent at this point in time to put a road on these lots. You can access the cemetery itself from Sprague Street, and you can access it from Walltown Street. We believe that's adequate. Probably, and I say probably because we don't have unlimited resources. We depend on donations. We have had some money that was willed to us over the years, and that money is invested. But we don't have a bottomless pit of money. So, but it would be our intent, I think, to put new pretty trees and or shrubbery and perhaps a fence of some type around at least part of the cemetery, which would probably include these 3 lots. But again, I can't give you any specific plan at this point in time. I'm one of 4 volunteer trustees, so I'm just speaking for myself and not the other trustees. But road-wise, I can't imagine that we would ever put a road access across these lots.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes.
If I could just mention, I know the petitioner mentioned that they don't plan on burying anyone there, but there is no condition on here that states that. So unless they add a condition of that nature, there's nothing about the zoning that would prevent that. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in support of this? Okay. Then we'll turn to the opposition. Sharon Anderson.
Okay, all right. Good afternoon. I'm Sharon Anderson, and my address is 1901 East Sprague Street, 27107. First of all, let me state I do not oppose the zoning. What I've talked with Mr. Morgan about was the fact that my, I'm going to show you pictures. This is the site from my deck. When I moved into the house in 1990, the trees were there, and I certainly do appreciate the fact that the cemetery has taken down a lot of the trees and cleaned up the shrub, some of the debris, because it was a dumping ground. People would come and dump unused furniture or unwanted furniture and trash and so forth. So it definitely has eliminated some of that. However, when I purchased the home, obviously I did not see the cemetery because their trees and so forth was covering it. So now that the trees have been removed, this is what I see from my deck. And while I have nothing against the dead, I just really don't want to see these headstones, to be honest with you. So I've talked with Mr. Morgan about the possibility of some type of fencing or shrubbery or trees. And as he stated earlier, this is a volunteer organization. I understand the fact that they don't have, unlimited resources. It's not owned by the city. So I guess it's on the people who use the cemetery and whatever donations they may receive to maintain the cemetery and operate it. So I understand that then it may not be an immediate possibility, but I just wanted to, I guess, get some kind of commitment that there would be something placed there at some point to kind of hide the headstones.
If you're done, I have a question. So is what we're looking at the lots that are in question and then the cemetery?
I think that's correct. Right,
Okay.
Mr. Morgan? Yeah.
Gotcha.
In
But
the
yeah,
condition that,
So-
is the condition going to address our concern that we're adding? That's my question.
Yeah, if there was a condition. So I'm just trying to understand. So you didn't see the cemetery until the
Trees
lots were
came down.
purchased and the trees came down, and although it was intended to not be a shield for people who shouldn't be there, it turned into removing the shield from you seeing the cemetery. Gotcha. Thanks.
Would you be satisfied with any type of buffer, be it a fence or shrubbery, that could prevent you from seeing the headstones from your deck?
Most definitely. I think, something natural would be wonderful. And I know it would take, some time for it to mature, but just knowing that at some point it would mature and it would not be this open space. And I'm assuming that there's going to be some more clearance, because as you can see here, that there's still quite a bit of stuff remaining, wood items, and I think there's still some large logs still there. that
They're
gonna-
working there
working to-
today, and they're working there tomorrow.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
work is ongoing.
yeah. I mean, they've done an amazing job of clearing the land, because it really was an eyesore. And when I bought the property in 1989, obviously, because I didn't see it, I knew the cemetery was there because it's on Waughtown, and it's in between Waughtown and Sprague, and I knew you could see it from those angles, but I had no idea that it extended quite that deep into that property.
Well, what is that distance from the street to the cemetery, the existing cemetery?
The width of those lots up at the northern end is about 120 feet. As it comes south, it gets a little wider, probably around 200-ish feet.
And it looks like the plots are within probably 15 or 20 feet of the property line, the existing zoning boundary, the IP RS9 zoning boundary. So 170
Given the
feet.
distance from her deck, a fence probably wouldn't hide it. Looking over a fence at it, wouldn't you?
Probably because when you sit up on the deck, it's not a high, it's kind of a low deck, but you still, that's why I said maybe something like trees or shrubberies that would mature and grow a little taller, but would be nicer.
That's going to put you
maintained.
back where you were before you cleared it.
Well, but if it's nicely maintained, the property owners didn't really maintain that land. I know the lady who owned one of the land, pieces of property, her husband died several years ago, and once he died, she really couldn't maintain the property, so.
I think I heard a question asked, would the condition take care of this concern? The answer to that question is no, and it's for two different reasons. For one, it would only be triggered if they came in to do a plat. The only way we're going to do a plat is if they open more plots that aren't already platted, and it doesn't sound like they have an intention to do that, so it wouldn't handle it for that reason. And the other reason is this would be IPL zoning adjacent to the right-of-way, where she's looking, that area right there is the right-of-way of that side street, and you don't have to plant a buffer yard between the right-of-way and the cemetery. It's just from adjacent residentially zoned property. So it wouldn't address it from either of those two perspectives. It would in the future, if they were to do a plat, put a buffer along the northern and southern property lines of this newly, if approved, newly rezoned IPL property, but it wouldn't handle the concern that Ms. Anderson is raising.
What's the spacing on trees in the type 2 buffer? 50 feet or something like that?
Typically, one every 50 feet, 2 per 100.
Yeah. So I wonder if, it's not a lot of shielding right now, but in years to come, I wonder if petitioner might, he's willing to put up with the type 2 buffer where he abuts residential now if he agrees with the condition we're getting ready to put on this, if we make a motion to approve. I wonder if he might be willing to put that within a certain distance. Does it fit within, I guess my question for probably the petitioner, and I'm not trying to cut you off, ma'am, but my question for the petitioner would be is, could you live with a type 2 or 2.5 buffer within a certain number of feet of those stones closest to the street right here? I don't know how long that runs. Is that 500-foot run or 400-foot run or a 300-foot run from left to right?
300, right there, it looks
300 feet?
It's 303.
300 where it abuts the cemetery, 200 where it abuts Light Street.
Yeah.
200.
I wonder if that might be since he's planning on since the petitioner indicated he might be planning on planting some trees and some shrubs and things like that at some point in the future, I wonder if that is a condition the petitioner might be able to live with.
Mr. Warren, could you come back up here, please?
Didn't mean to cut you off, ma'am. Just
No, do you have anything else that you? Okay.
We're friends.
Okay. That's fine.
You understand what I'm talking about?
I'm
trying to get some visible shielding from that street, looking into. Do you see the picture? They got the same picture
Can you
we've
show
got.
them on the map or on the place?
I'm sorry. And I'm not trying to force anything on you, but I'm just asking, since you brought it up, you're thinking about planting some new trees, some vegetation and stuff, I wondered if we could get a type 2 within 25 feet of that property line or something like that.
So, Clarence, just for clarification, are you talking along the Light Street frontage, or are you talking back here along where it abuts the cemetery?
The street.
Okay. So I think right in here is kind of the area in question.
Yeah, and it sort of segments the cemetery, too. It separates it from the adjoining properties and stuff.
Is the right-of-way there 60 feet? Is Light Street 60 feet there? I mean, I know the street is not, but is the right-of-way 60 feet?
It looks
Well, I mean, I would guess it is. So you can't put the trees in the right-of-way, so you're going to have to push them back further to the headstones, which actually helps in this situation because it gets the screening further back towards what you're trying to screen off.
Yeah. So would you consider living with a condition that requires you to put a type 2 buffer outside the right-of-way, but as close to the right-of-way as possible, so it wouldn't interfere with your use of the land?
You're kind of talking parallel to Light Street.
Yes.
Back.
Yeah. Could you live with a type 2 buffer right there?
I can stand here and say, yes, I can do that, but everything we do is dependent upon having resources to be able to do that.
Right.
So all I'll say, don't make a good argument by taking it off the tax rolls. That's not going to look too favorably to the city council, I don't think. So if you're saving all that tax money, you might as well plant some trees.
We're saving $285 a year on these 3 lots. That's about what we're saving. Our intent is certainly to beautify not only these 3 lots, but the entire cemetery.
Right.
I think it is certainly safe to say, and I guess I can use the word, we could commit to it in a reasonable time frame.
Yeah.
Now, whatever we plant, in fact, I grew up 200 feet from what we're talking about here. I'm not grow up. I went to church at First United Church of Christ, which you can actually see from the cemetery. And I was at that church yesterday looking at what they had planted around the church, and it gave us some ideas about what we could do at this cemetery. Crepe myrtle trees, that kind of thing. But whatever we would plant now,
Right.
I don't know how quickly it would grow.
Hey, Chris.
Certainly our intent to do something.
Right. Chris and Aaron, y'all trying to figure out how many trees and bushes you need. How many do we need?
If for like a 30-foot type 2, it'd be 4 deciduous trees and 16 primary evergreens. What I was going to maybe throw out as something to think about is if the primary evergreens could go in first, sort of establish that screening, and then maybe at a later date to sort of offset some of that cost, maybe the deciduous trees or whatever else has to go in goes in, but at least get the primary evergreens in kind of first. That's going to help provide the most.
Let's structure this condition so it maximizes the difficulty for the inspections department. All right.
And part of our concern too, if I might continue to speak, okay? Because of past vandalism and past litter problems, what we do not want to do is put something up along Light Street specifically, because that's where most of the litter has come from. What we don't want to have to do is put up something, a kind of fence where vandals can tear it down, and then we have to spend money to rebuild it. Or destroy trees, and we have to spend more money to replant them. What we would like to be able to do is to put something there to protect and beautify that would be lasting, where we don't have to keep pumping money into it.
Okay.
And what would that be? Where do you recommend it?
Well, what I have thought about is an attractive kind of fence that would not block a view. I mean, what I would not want to do is put up a solid block wall 6 feet high. What I think might make sense is some type of an attractive fence with shrubbery and or trees planted along with that fence.
And they weren't even asking for the fence right now. You could do the fence, that'd be great. We were just trying to get some shrubs and everything, right?
Yep, just half a dozen trees and a dozen shrubs. I mean, that's what we're talking about, right?
And I'm not a tree expert, so I don't know what kind of tree
Half a
would
dozen
work.
evergreens and a dozen.
Like say for a 30-foot type 2, it'd be 4 deciduous trees and 16 primary evergreen plants for the Light Street frontage at 200 feet.
And we do have a landscaper mowing company that maintains the cemetery currently.
Well,
And I have had discussions with him about thought processes about what can we do going forward. So we will be working with him.
Well, if you think you can live with sort of what we've been describing, I'm probably getting ready to make a motion once we close the public hearing with that kind of condition, so.
Okay. All right, stick around. Anyone else like to speak in opposition to this? If not, then I'll declare the public hearing closed.
Okay. Then I'd move approval, plus the condition that staff recommended. You all had a type 2. Am I already a case behind?
No,
There's type 2, yeah. Plus- And then a type 2 buffer along, what is it, Light Street? Light Street, yeah, of course, outside the right-of-way.
Second.
Can we clarify when that goes in? Because again, we don't have like a trigger to kind of hang that on with building permits or occupancy, so are we sort of putting a time frame with that?
Well, right now is not time to be planting them anyway, but
Sure.
you can put 6 months, a year, I mean, or something like
For
that.
the Light Street portion of or the Light Street condition that you have, there needs to be some type of trigger or time frame. The other one is just when and if it ever gets triggered, but in this case, it would just be within a specified period of time.
Yeah, end of the year,
December
fall's
31?
tree planting season. That's 4 trees about
So,
what comes up.
so by December 31st, 2017.
Yep. That's the motion.
Okay. So we have a motion to put a type 2 buffer in by December 31.
And are you talking about immediately along the Light Street right-of-way or anywhere between Light Street and where the burial plots are?
I think anywhere is better than immediately along.
Right.
Because if it fits within their plan to get close to the cemetery, that of course improves the barrier. So I'd say anywhere then.
Can we get the petitioner to agree to that?
Can I hear all of that in one fell swoop?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we were asking you to build a type 2 buffer, which is about 4 trees.
4 trees.
4 or 5 trees, right? 4 or 5 trees is going to
Yes.
satisfy 4 trees.
And how many shrubs? 16?
16 primary evergreen. 16 primary evergreen, not shrubs, 16 primary evergreen, which is like a Nellie Stevens holly.
Okay.
But again, over 200 feet, you can get a pretty good spacing on those. It's not going to, it wouldn't have to be a linear block. You could plant them in a way that would make it visually interesting and still keep, I think, their mission of not having a barrier, not having an area where folks could accumulate trash and dump and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so that gives you the latitude to do some architecturally or aesthetically pleasing groupings of plantings and things like that. But money-wise, you're going to need about 4 deciduous and 16 evergreen. That's the condition we'd be imposing upon you. And you can plant them anywhere between, that buffer can be anywhere between Light and the edge of your tombstones or
All right, I'm hearing 4 or 5, and then I'm hearing him say 16.
It's in addition to, it's 4 deciduous, and it's 16.
Plus
16 evergreen.
And the 4 deciduous is by December 31st, correct?
All of it, yeah.
Can we possibly go longer than December 31st?
What if we offered?
And the reason I'm saying that, the man that's doing the work at the cemetery now, he's working there today and tomorrow. This is the first time he's been able to work there in 2 weeks. So I'm not sure how quickly he can finish all of his work. And then when he finishes, does it make sense to plant stuff at a particular time, or would you be better off waiting till spring?
You'll
not
plant in the fall. Yeah, you'll plant in the fall.
And I can't stand here and guarantee you that we would be in a position
To do that this
to
fall.
do that.
Okay.
I can guarantee you that we would be in a position to do that by next
The
fall.
next fall.
Somebody made the comment that the deciduous or the evergreens are going to give you the most bang for your buck early on. So what if we required the evergreens by the end of this calendar year and
Or deciduous
the
later.
deciduous? I mean, you're
What's in
planting
the
little
year?
bitty deciduous trees that
$50.
aren't going to provide any screening until they get taller and leaf out anyway. So I don't know.
You okay giving him another year, ma'am?
Okay, my understanding is the shrubs by the end of the year, the trees by the end of next year.
Right.
I think shrubs probably is not so evergreen, something that's not going to lose its foliage versus deciduous, which loses its leaves.
Yeah. Okay. So I amend my motion.
I mean,
That's
we're
like-
moving as quickly as we
Right.
can at the cemetery, but this guy's got a lot of
I
other
understand.
jobs.
So my motion's been amended to be the 16 primarily evergreen by December 31, with the deciduous to follow 1 year later. So December 31.
Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Lamb. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, by Mr. Younger. Any discussion on this? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you, sir.
So this will be going to City Council for hearing in August. Yeah. I'm sorry, did you say Mr. Younger second that? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm running behind. I was writing out a condition.
Next item on your agenda is zoning docket F-1567, and the petitioner is St. James United Methodist Church. The site is 1.17 acres in size, located on the north side of Bethania Rural Hall Road across from Church Street. And the request is a special use rezoning from RS9, residential single family, to IPS, institutional public special use for the two uses of child daycare center and church or religious institution neighborhood. This is Legacy's growth management plan. It's located in Rural Hall in the northern part of the county within the yellow growth management area 3 suburban neighborhoods. And this is a zoning map showing the subject property there highlighted in the center in yellow. It does have a neighborhood scale church, again, located on it there. You have Bethania Rural Hall Road, Highway 65, across from Church Street. The property is currently zoned RS9, as is most all of the surrounding property. There is some industrial property across the street that backs up to the railroad. Aerial photograph showing the subject property. In the church there, surrounded by parking on two sides and circulation to the north. And this is the area plan map, the Rural Hall area plan, which was adopted last year, and it recommends institutional land use for the request or for the subject property. These images are taken on site. This is looking into the subject property there, the church from Bethania Rural Hall Road. This is looking across the street, looking into the parking lot a little bit there on the right. This blue dumpster there would be screened once the request would be approved. And this is the back of the parking lot area, and this is where the play area would be installed if approved. They're proposing about 26 children. The minimum play area for child daycare centers is 4,000 square feet. So they've got that amount of area there. So there would be a play area there and a 4-foot fence surrounding that. Just beyond the car here is where the walkway would be that would provide a pedestrian linkage from the play area to the inside of the building. This is on the western side of the subject property there. This would become an access only for circulation. There is a buffer yard, a 15-foot type 2 buffer yard requirement along this borderline here. That's per every 100 feet. That's 2 deciduous trees, 20 supplemental evergreen shrubs, and 8 evergreen plantings per 100 feet at a 15-foot wide buffer yard. They've only got, as you can maybe see on the site plan, about 8 feet there, and it narrows down a little bit more right here at the entrance. So they would need to request a buffer yard width variance from the County Zoning Board of Adjustment. And this is looking towards town. The site is just to the left. This is a site plan. The subject, the building there is shown in blue, institutional land use. The request is consistent with the area plan, recommending institutional land use, and then the play area there is shown in green. Again, it's consistent with institutional land use recommended in the Rural Hall area plan. It would allow for child care services to be conveniently located near a residential area. And we did contact the town of Rural Hall, and they are supportive of the request. And so staff's recommendation is for approval, and the site plan does meet UDO requirements. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions, staff, at this time?
A question for you. If it's rezoned IP, does that mean any other activities that would go with the IP would then be allowed in the future?
Well, if it was rezoned to straight IP, that's correct. But they're going for IPS for just those two uses, child daycare center and neighborhood scale church. So those are the only two uses that could occur on this property.
So no other IP uses that could be accessory for a church would be allowed except this.
Well, if it's accessory to the two uses that are allowed, which I don't know if there's any for the child daycare center, but there are accessory uses for church, that would still be allowed. Yes.
So it is opening up additional uses.
Well, a church is allowed in RS9 now, so it can currently do accessory uses, and it actually could do a daycare center if it was operated by the church. This will not be operated by the church, and therefore you have the rezoning.
Okay.
So it's a third party, or second party, if you will, operating the daycare center.
And Gary, also, I thought I remembered reading that there is a condition about electronic message.
That's correct, yes. I failed to mention that, sorry. The IP district does allow for electronic message board sign in the county jurisdiction, and so they've agreed to put a condition to where that would not be allowed. And you might have seen on one of the images there's a kind of a temporary sign that's on the site now that advertises daycare services, and that would be removed. That's not shown on the site plan, so that would be removed. Just the only permanent sign there that's shown now in brick would remain.
Okay. Any other questions of staff at this time? It says a public hearing. No one has signed up. Does anyone like to speak in support of this? Anyone in support? Anyone like to speak in opposition? Okay. Is the petitioner here?
No, sir.
Oh, y'all want to go first?
Okay.
Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Jan Comer, and my mom lives on 125.
Excuse me, ma'am. Need your address, please.
Oh, I live in Louisville, 6911 Marshall Road. Okay, there you go. Now, my mom lives at 125 Bethania Street, and it's my home place. And some days out of the week I'm staying with Mom, and some days of the week I'm going home to Louisville. Now, she's right across the road from the Morrises, and also from Andrew, which is right up against that property. And I'm opposed to any type of daycare or anything going in there. We don't need no daycare in there. Like it just the way it is. Is there anything else?
That's up to you. We've got 11 more minutes. I mean, anything else you'd like to say? If not, there are two other I want to speak.
Was there anybody that went around and asked anybody else that lived around there whether they wanted it or not? As far as I know, there wasn't.
We did make the petitioner's representative aware numerous times that we needed some neighborhood outreach efforts. It's not a requirement as of yet, unless the county adopted the ordinance today, but we did not hear back from them in that regard. And of course, the application, as I stated in their staff report, does not indicate any outreach efforts either way.
If they were going to do a daycare, why couldn't they have it in the building?
Well, the daycare center use does require an outdoor play area. That's one of the requirements.
Right, I believe it's just the play area that is outside. I would imagine the daycare use itself will be inside the church building. But
Why is the play area backed up to Andrew's property?
We don't know, ma'am.
Well, how would I like to have a property over there and have a daycare backed up to our property and try to mow, or anything could happen, or anything like that? And you've got all these children. It's not going to be a quiet neighborhood like it was before. The one time it's not really quiet is when the train goes by or something other. Is the church going to profit off of this?
And we don't know.
You don't know? Well, we're opposed to it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Jason Morris. I'm the owner of 131 Bethany Street, along with my father, Junior Morris. He is the owner of 136 Bethany Street. One of the things about this property, and I don't know if you could see here, when I was reading the petition, one of the questions I had was, they said something about land stripping. Are they going to remove, there's an old tree that's probably 200 or 300 years old. Are they looking to remove that to do the playground? That would be one of my questions, because the fact that there's some federal protected birds that lives and nest in that tree that are covered under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So I just wanted to be aware of that if they're going to remove that tree. There's also some concerns, potential concerns, if there's going to be children there. One of the end of the property, there's plants, toxic plants that would have to be taken care of. Also, there's some bee nests. I think it's on the railroad property. So those would be potential hazardous for kids that they would have to take care of. Also, the property is located like 50 feet almost from the road, the main road, and it's also located about 75 feet from the railroad. My understanding right now, there is no protective barriers there whatsoever. So I think protective barriers would be a requirement. And the only other thing is that, most of the neighborhoods, this is a working area, and, everybody works different hours. So if there's a daycare there, basically what's going to happen is there's going to be increased noise levels and increased traffic. In addition, there could be some potential liabilities of children, where, when you're weeding and you're mowing or something to get in that area. I believe that this really puts an undue burden from a liability standpoint on each of the surrounding families. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak?
It's about 7 minutes.
If not, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Go into work session.
Well, I just wanted to say that I think this shows the need for the neighborhood outreach ordinance, both in the city and the county. But I thought I heard you say, Paul, that they had approved it?
Well, just this afternoon at their 2 o'clock meeting, the county commissioners approved it. So because this application came in before then, it isn't subject to that. But it's up to the planning board to decide whether you want to continue this anyway, since it's apparent they didn't do any outreach on it, or you can go ahead and vote it up or down based on what you heard.
Why is the petitioner not here?
I think that's sort of the two together is my concern. The fact they didn't do the outreach and they didn't show up today. If they'd done one or the other, at least we could ask them some questions. Maybe these folks could get their questions answered, but it's kind of hard for us to do much when they're not talking to the neighbors and they're not talking to us.
Yeah. I personally just would continue it to see if they show up next month. I mean, we could.
I agree with you. Move we continue it to next month.
Second. Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by 4 others. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. All right, so
It'll be
Yeah, so it'll be continued, it'll be continued to the August planning board meeting.
No, we can only do twice, and that was my next point. When, in order to give them time to have the meetings, I want to, well, just make a 2-month continuous.
If you do make it 2 months, then that'll be, it can't be continued anymore after.
That's right.
Right.
But, you know,
I have a question. When does I know that if the church had operated this, if they'd not had an outside committee, what actually changes the distinction? You know, they could hire a person who is a daycare director, and so that's sort of outsourced the management of the daycare. Is that a change in operation? What triggers you all looking at it and saying, no, you got to bring it in front of the planning board?
I'll let Chris.
Well, again, as part of the application process, we ask whenever they come in and talk to us. They came in for a sketch plan review, and she made it clear, she was operating this. That she was operating in conjunction with the church, but it was her daycare. It was her for-profit business. It wasn't a mission or outreach of the church. So with that, then that takes it out of being able to do it as an accessory to the church. The church has to own it, operate it. Again, you could hire someone, but it's not their business as part of the church. The church did not want to make it part of their mission. They were okay with allowing someone to operate in there, and I didn't actually speak to. I don't know whether Aaron has anything to add to that, but that's essentially the distinction.
Well, two things, and I think to answer the lady's question, the church is going to make some money off of it. They're going to charge some rent, they're going to lease it, and they're probably limiting their liability by someone else operating it as well.
So
are we on August? Give them time to have the meetings and that sort of thing. Is that you think? I hate these folks come back next month and then we continue it another month.
Right.
When the ordinance took effect.
Well, for any applications that come in after today, it would be a requirement for the neighborhood meeting.
But you're making it a requirement, essentially, or giving them time to have one.
Okay.
Well, in this case, because it is something that affects the people around there potentially with the noise and traffic, I think it is fair for everybody. Whether that's required or not, because you're putting increasing activity right in a neighborhood.
Right. It's any zoning case. Yeah, it's totally at your discretion whether you want to vote it up or down today, or whether you want to continue it.
Well, we've already got a motion to continue it for a month, and we'll just let it stand at that, and the petitioner just needs to get to work and have some meetings with the neighbors, it sounds like. So, you guys think a month gives them enough time, and you get it? All right.
So what type of correspondence will the petitioner receive from this meeting, letting them know our decision?
They'll receive a call tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Motion is to continue for 1 month. All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, folks. See, Aaron, you're not the only one to continue cases next month.
We'll have a full plate for you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I guess we're done with the work program. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and you'll recall at our work session last time, Margaret reviewed with you, summarized the proposed work program for this next year, and we held it until today to give you a chance to look over it further, but it would be up to you as to whether you want to go ahead and adopt the work program for this fiscal year that we've just started.
Anyone have any concerns, questions about the work program?
Yeah, I had a question, Margaret. I was just wondering if it's covered in here already or not, but should the state Board of Transportation approve, I understand that they're going to be voting in August on an updated transportation plan, which includes moving up the start of the western leg of the Northern Beltway to 2021, I believe. So in other words, within the next 4 years. Wondering if that would trigger us to consider doing any planning around the interchanges for that.
I don't think we've talked about that, but that's an interesting thing. We should at least think about it. We are doing the western area plan, and that covers over this next year, and that would cover maybe 2 of the interchanges.
Right.
But beyond
I'm
that,
talking about the piece that goes from 52 to 67. That's
the
part
eastern side.
That's the part, the western side. They're speeding that up. They're proposing
Right.
to change the
Right.
timetable on that.
Right, and then, I mean, I have to look and see. We have not considered it. That's a good thing. We'll look at it and see if that timing means that we should be doing that.
If that's not already covered by what you're looking at, I agree. That's something that you
Right.
should
Now, we do have in place the North Suburban Area Plan and the Tobaccoville Area Plan, and those are the 2 area plans that flank that corridor there. So maybe one thing we could do at one of your upcoming work sessions is we could at least tell you what those area plans say around those interchanges, and then we'll be having the discussion this year about the next round of area plans. And that could affect your timing. This could affect your timing for when you want those plans to be revisited. So it sounds like we've got some time to be able to update those area plans, and we would certainly want to consider the interchange planning as part of those area plans. But what this timing could do is affect the timing of when we do the area plan updates.
I imagine those interchanges were already addressed in the last updates of those area plans because they've been pretty well known for some time. So.
Right, yeah, and I don't know if it's a timing thing. For example, Kirk just pointed out to me Rural Hall, but we certainly know that the plan assumes that interchange, and I don't know that the timing is going to be impacted. So, but I think that's an excellent point. We need to look at those things, and we'll come back with our recommendation
I was
for
just
you.
thinking something more specific they may have on the road corridor that has changed or altered that.
The corridors have not changed. All that's changed is timing.
Okay.
Right.
There's no change in the road alignment.
And we have, I'm just thinking back because we don't have those plans in front of us right here, but as we have done area plans, we've tried to keep in mind the future beltway corridors and what the land uses should be. But with it approaching even sooner, our next updates for it would be a chance to kind of review that even more intentionally there. So,
Good point, though.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the work program? Do I get a motion that we adopt it?
We adopt.
Second. Motion by Mr. Lamb, second Mr. Younger. Any comments? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you.
all right, thank you.
All right.
So I guess at this point, we move on to the election of the chair and the vice chair, and I guess that's where I very briefly and temporarily take over the chairmanship of the feel the power. But at this point, let me open the floor for any nominations for chairperson of the planning board this coming year.
If he'll accept, I'd like to nominate Arnold King again.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Assuming that Mr. King accepts that, are there any other nominations?
I'd move that we close nominations.
Okay. Second to that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And with them closed, then we have the nomination and the motion is second made. All in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, say no. Okay. Mr. Arnold King, chairman.
Then I'll
Turn
open
it over
up
to you.
nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Alan Younger.
Second.
I accept. Mr. Younger's been nominated. Any other nominations?
Move that we close the
Close the nominations.
Motion by Mr. Grubb, second Mr. Leek to close the nominations. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Then is there a motion to elect Mr. Younger as vice chair?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Grubb, second Mr. Leek. Any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All
Congratulations.
right.
Thank you.
we don't want to take that as a vote of confidence, or just no one else foolish enough to do it. So we're on that. So we'll take it. Right, Mr. Young? Okay.
Absolutely.
Staff report.
Okay. Well, starting off with what it looks like for August 10th, you had, I was going to say 7 cases. You now have 8 cases, 5 of which are continuations, 3 new cases, 1 additional one in the county, plus a proposed UDO amendment that we're going to talk about in just a minute, plus 2 planning board reviews. So it'll be a pretty full load for your next time. And however, with this UDO amendment, I wanted to offer you all the opportunity to eliminate your work session coming up in July, if we can take just a few moments right now to brief you on the UDO text amendment that will be coming to you in August. So if that's okay with you, we'll go ahead and brief the UDO text amendment and have Tiffany White. She will do that, but it has to do, if you'll recall, the zoning case we had a few months ago, I think it was back in April or so, Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center was proposed the rezoning for their area there, and during that discussion, not that they were proposing it, but people were concerned about the limited campus use possibilities for land beyond that. And so as a result of those discussions, at the city council meeting where they finally voted on the rezoning, the council asked us to take a look at revising the regulations for limited campus use to make that a elected body special use permit. So Tiffany has been looking at that, and she has a draft ordinance to explain to you.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. Yeah. I think Paul just basically gave my gave my review here. So, as he mentioned, this is a small text amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance regarding limited campus uses. The proposed amendment would require an elected body review through special use permit process for limited campus uses in residential areas. So currently, limited campus use provisions allow an institution with campus zoning to establish multifamily residential or office uses which are directly related to the institution in single-family zoning districts within 500 feet of the boundaries of that institution's district. So these proposals are reviewed by the planning board without a public hearing. As Paul mentioned, in May 2017, City Council heard and approved a property adjacent to the Ardmore neighborhood for an expansion of Baptist Medical Center's campus zoning district, and some of the citizens expressed concern that there wasn't more opportunity for them to have some public comment on the potential limited campus uses that would go with this expansion. Based on these concerns, City Council directed staff to prepare this amendment. If adopted, this amendment will require future limited campus use proposals to be reviewed under City County Commissioners' special use permit process, which requires a public hearing where affected citizens can comment. Staff believes this change will allow institutions to continue to operate and expand in neighborhoods while allowing residents to have a greater role in the development process.
And one thing that will remain are these use conditions that you see in 2-5.45. So those have been in the ordinance. They would continue to remain in the ordinance to assure some level of compatibility in terms of what is proposed there.
Could I ask you a question? Sure. The process to get the special use permit, is this a legislative process or a quasi-judicial?
Quasi-judicial.
Okay, so then it would be subject to the 4 findings that we normally use for the other cases?
Yes.
Okay. And had you thought about the 500 feet as opposed to contiguous? In other words, do we really need to allow campus uses within the 500-foot boundary, or should they be limited to just contiguous to the campus? Because I think we saw in that case, the recent case in Ardmore, that 500 feet really affected some properties that I don't think really were appropriate to be included in the campus aspect of this, because it intruded into the neighborhood. So I just have a concern with the 500 feet.
Right. I didn't look at that. For this text amendment, it was really just looking at review as opposed to changing the UDO for that boundary to make it within 250 feet as opposed to 500 or something like that. We didn't look at how far the limited campus uses could expand. We didn't look to adjust that. It was just the review process.
If I could just interject a little on that note. First of all, good afternoon, planning board members. We didn't think too much on that issue. We were thinking, though, that since this review would be a special use permit with findings of fact and the onus would be on the petitioner, in this case the institution, to demonstrate that this wouldn't be harmful to neighborhoods, that there may be some situations where the current 500-foot distance requirement in the ordinance may make sense, and to kind of let the city council or the county commissioners evaluate those on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, questions?
I just think it's, when it says 500 feet, it has to be entirely in it. So that gives me a sense of limiting what you can do with it.
Okay. So this will be on our agenda next month, right?
That's right. It'll be up for public hearing, and we will, I think we have already done some outreach on this, and we'll certainly be glad to send you any other comments we get up until then. Do you know if we've gotten any comments so far on this?
I sent out email communications to every property owner that has campus zoning in the county right now, and I haven't heard back any concerns from any folks at this point.
Had your neighborhood meetings yet?
I think we're having it right now.
All right. Thanks. And that is it for staff report.
Oh, that's a short staff report. Okay. For the good of the order, Mr. Lamb, you have a guest you want to introduce.
I do. I'd like to introduce you to John Bennett. Gentlemen, thank you, John, for standing up. John is an outstanding product of our public school system here in Forsyth County. He's a rising senior at East Forsyth High School.
Yeah.
And my alma mater as well. And John is for better or worse, is interning with my company this summer, and he's been exposed to what I think are civic obligations of all citizens and business folks, and that's being involved in the process. So,
very good.
John, thank you for being here with us today, and thank you all for allowing him to be here.
Welcome, young man.
Come back next month. Now, we got 8 or 9 cases. You can stay back. Okay. All right.
I may need to tap out. You may
want to bring dinner with you.
Any other board members, anything for the good of the order here today? If not, then
Ready to have our motion to adjourn.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? We're adjourned.